Right now, the front is heating up. The armed forces of Ukraine are breaking through. 90,000 occupiers have been sent to Kobzon. Zelensky has announced that Russia is sharpening its teeth and preparing to open a second front. Shock. Who is in Putin's crosshairs? And now Germany is backing out, Russia is launching nukes. This has never happened before. It's hard to believe, a moment that sends chills down your spine. Has the point of no return really begun? More on this in just a moment.
Ukraine's defense forces continue to clear Pokrovsk of occupiers. Russian troops have temporarily slowed the pace of their offensive in the city and its surroundings. At the same time, the invaders are blocking Ukrainian logistics in Mirnorod, hoping to break the city's defenses, according to the Institute for the Study of War.
The occupiers are trying to take control of the Ukrainian Armed Forces logistics, not only in Pokrovsk, but also accordingly in the Mirnorod area. The sharp increase in the number of attacks in the Kharkov area, a key settlement that was liberated by the Ukrainian Armed Forces, creates, and control over it creates, a threat to the entire incursion of Russian occupation forces in the Dobropilia direction.
The intensity of fighting in Pokrovsk has decreased, but this does not mean that the Russians have abandoned their plans to occupy the city. The Ukrainian command has plans for various possible developments, stated the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky.
The existence of two plans indicates that all possible scenarios for developments, including in the Pokrovsk agglomeration, are being considered. According to Russian sources, Russian army losses in Pokrovsk are comparable to those in Bakhmut. Let me remind you, Russian occupation army losses in Bakhmut amounted to about 90,000 personnel.
And while the armed forces of Ukraine are fighting the occupiers, Putin is making new plans. Volodymyr Zelensky considers it quite likely that Russia could open a second front against another European country before the war in Ukraine ends.
The Russian Federation is probing for weak links in the NATO country's defense system. In other words, it is casting doubt on the very possibility of the practical implementation of Article 5 of the NATO Charter on Collective Security. In addition, the Russian Federation is constantly trying to raise the level of tension at the borders with NATO countries, specifically with Finland and Sweden.
In recent years, Russia has been actively using elements of hybrid warfare, although Moscow traditionally denies any involvement. Against the backdrop of Russian drone incursions, Britain is strengthening Belgium's defenses. Meanwhile, in Germany, they have admitted that they are not yet ready for
and the corresponding equipment of the Bundeswehr. This is precisely why the German government's program is focused on financing both the German defense industry and accordingly increasing the country's defense capability of the German state. That is why Germany now ranks second after the United States in terms of military technical assistance to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, in Moscow, they continue to rattle their nuclear sabers. It seems this is the Kremlin's eternal scenario. Putin's spokesman Peskov made it clear that if the US really conducts nuclear tests, Russia will be forced to respond in kind.
According to the registry office, at the moment there is activity by the Russian side at the test site on the arc of Pilayanova Zemlya. In other words, this is about the resumption of so-called tests on the part of Putin and accordingly the Russian Federation. Putin fully understands that the nuclear argument is the last resort that the Russian Federation can use in negotiations with the United States when it comes to stopping the war in Ukraine.
In turn, Ukraine, together with its European Union partners, is preparing proposals for the 20th package of sanctions against Russia, which is expected to include additional restrictions on the Russian energy sector, the shadow fleet and companies that support the aggressor's military-industrial complex. Ukraine's fierce revenge. Blackout returns to Russian territory like a boomerang. Region after region is swallowed by darkness. Drones are working non-stop. Incredible. Russians are singing a sad song. You have to hear it. Putin is writing farewell letters to southern Russia. There's no electricity, and it seems there's no reason to count on heat either. Moscow has never been this close to a painful blow. Any moment now, something will happen that the whole world will applaud. Don't miss the first details. On the night of November 9th, the Ukrainian Armed Forces struck the thermal power plant in Voronezh. After the strike, electricity disappeared in several buildings, but then came back. Voronezh TPP-1 is the largest supplier of thermal energy in the region and provides it to 4 districts of the city.
It hit right on the wires over there, apparently, basically. Well, essentially. No, well, I heard 3, but they're saying 4.
In Belgorod, the Luch thermal power plant was attacked, leaving tens of thousands of residents without electricity. The region's governor, Vyacheslav Latkov, stated that the damage is very serious.
As a result of last night's missile strike, there is now very serious and extensive damage to the power and heating supply systems of the city of Belgorod. Our energy workers, as always. They are heroically and diligently trying to cope with the challenging and demanding tasks at hand. At this moment, they are now actively and persistently working to restore and recover from the significant losses inflicted and caused by the enemy forces.
A day earlier, Ukrainian drones struck energy facilities in Saratov, Engels, and the Volgograd region. There were also recorded power outages there. With massive drone and missile attacks, Russia is trying to plunge Ukraine into a blackout. In response, the Ukrainian army is striking at Russia's energy sector with symmetrical strikes. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that the authorities are prepared not only to defend the infrastructure, but also to carry out retaliatory strikes. What
will happen with electricity? Today, it's hard for me to say. We will be ready for all challenges in response. We work on this every day. We will defend, we will fight. The Russians must know that, step by step, we will increase the production of everything necessary so that they too feel what we are feeling. Volodymyr Zelensky in 2025.
In the year 2025, Russia is experiencing a trend of increasing electricity shortages. As of October this year, the shortage of capacity in the power grid reaches tens of gigawatts. This was reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
Due to the demand from industrial, residential, and municipal consumers exceeding the total generation of all power plants, as of October this year, there is a shortage of capacity in the power grid. It has already reached 25 gigawatts. Despite the Russian government's attempts to implement at least some measures to stabilize its energy system, such as monetary compensation or discounts on electricity bills for voluntarily reducing consumption during peak hours, as well as disconnecting consumers who do not require guaranteed power supply, the growing electricity deficit indicates a systemic crisis in Russia's energy sector. The Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine.
Where an overload as well as systematic strikes by the Ukrainian Armed Forces are taking a toll on the Russian energy system. If Ukrainian strikes even partially damage Russia's thermal power sector, it will cause significant problems for the country's energy system. The Ukrainian Armed Forces have already brought a blackout in southern Russia 60% closer.
Ukrainian strikes are gradually knocking out high-voltage substations that allow electricity to be transferred from one region to another. If thermal power plants are also destroyed, their situation will be much more difficult than ours. Alexander Karchenko, director of the Energy Research Center.
Not only Russian regions, but also Moscow are suffering from Ukrainian drone attacks and power outages.
And this has a very serious and such an anti-propaganda effect is directly felt by the Kremlin, which, let me remind you, claimed that one of the reasons for launching the so-called special military operation was to guarantee the security of the Russian Federation itself, as Putin and his entourage explained. We see that the war is coming directly to Moscow, and Muscovites themselves see this. And not only Muscovites, we see that the geography of drone attacks is indeed expanding. It is spreading across Ukraine.
Ukrainians have long since gotten used to and adapted to heat and electricity outages. But for Russians, this is an unexpected surprise. So now it's time to stock up on matches, candles, and firewood. Now,
every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
A flash of revenge is erupting in the heart of the West. Europe is building a drone wall. Russian drones will be falling before the eyes of the whole world. Moscow has finally received a counterstrike. Ukraine is in the spotlight. The technologies of the armed forces of Ukraine are leading the way. The security of the entire continent is being decided at this very moment. The tension level is at its maximum. The West has united and is preparing a real explosive bomb for the Kremlin. Putin's plans are melting away like ice. Europe's security is reaching unprecedented heights. All the details about this coming up. Don't miss what's next.
After a series of Russian drone incursions into the airspace of European countries, it became clear that the old air defense systems can no longer cope. These cheap drones, flying in swarms, break through conventional defense schemes and deplete stocks of expensive missiles and combat aircraft. This has now become a significant catalyst for the European Union to officially launch an ambitious and forward-looking initiative. The idea is to create a unified defense system along the eastern border of the EU, where sensors, radars, satellites, interceptors, and artificial intelligence will be able to detect, classify, and neutralize threats in real time.
We need to create a European system that will allow Europe to develop advanced drone solutions inspired by what is already being done in Ukraine.
It is Ukraine that plays a key role in this development. 4 years of war have made Ukrainian experience critically valuable. Here, tactics are tested, technologies are refined, and production chains for combat and counter-drone systems are established. In combat conditions, not on a training ground.
Now, drones have changed absolutely everything. And the best drone experts in the world are Ukrainians. I saw a video of a situation where a swarm of drones retreats from a single soldier. Even a single drone can lure a soldier into a trap while another attacks him from the other side. So we are already seeing how drones are becoming increasingly deadly. This will change the way wars are fought in every country. Not just drones, but also how to protect your roads, how to defend your airports, how to prevent drones from invading your territory. That's why Europe must quickly learn from Ukrainians how to defend its skies.
Ukraine offers not only experience but also an industrial base. Local manufacturers such as TechX can supply equipment, train operators, share combat experience, and standardize solutions to meet Europe's needs. The integration of Ukrainian technologies and expertise will make it possible to create adaptive, fast, and cost-effective systems capable of operating in real combat time. Funding is already being processed through the SAFE instrument and the EU defense budget, which provides sufficient 100 billion euros for the eastern flank. The drone wall plan includes 3 directions: aerial, land, and maritime lines of defense, which must be integrated into a single system. It will be able to control the airspace from the Baltic to the Black Sea.
According to the information and the news we read from different countries, the solution itself is at the stage of, let's say, finding or forming a consensus between the internal situations in each individual country, which may require changes in legislation, and how this will later be coordinated at the collective level. That is, in order to reach a common level, a unified position among the countries of the European Union and NATO, it is necessary for the individual member countries to come to an agreement first. You understand that in some places this requires legislative approval, in others it requires more thorough explanation to the public so that the actions are clear, there is support and there is understanding, which is important for countries with democracy, with ongoing electoral processes, where any step can be used by the opposition.
This project is part of a larger strategy called SHY 2030. These are 4 initiatives aimed at strengthening the EU's external corridors and protecting against drones, to create a joint air defense system and even provide space services for military needs. The main goal is to deter Russia and Belarus, especially considering that by 2030 the capabilities of the Russian armed forces may increase. The plan is to strengthen the eastern border by the end of 2026 and by 2027 to deploy a drone defense wall. At the same time, the EU is creating an integrated air defense system. Space-based intelligence, communication, and navigation services will support defense tasks. However, experts warn that bureaucracy and slow processes in Europe could delay the project. But if Europe can quickly establish this cooperation, the Shield 2030 could become a new line of defense that will protect not only EU countries but also Ukraine.